Hello and welcome to episode 115 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for stopping by, saying hi, kicking it with me today on the stream of dreams, the show of shows, and everything in between. If you are watching the live version, you'll know that it took me 2 attempts to get this intro off the ground because I have done something to the intro music where I play the intro music live instead of incorporating it into the edit where I do like the audio version and I edit the video version as well. I just figured if this show is going to be live, what's the point of having elements that people who aren't experiencing it live are going to miss out on, and so on and so forth. And I need to come up with a better version for that audio, but that will be that'll be a project for another day, another time, because we have a huge amount of gaming news to get through. Not like huge earth-shattering, stories necessarily. There is one big story about what's going on with Halo. We'll talk Halo. We also have some news around, Little Big Planet 3. We're going to talk about your friends and mine over at Saudi Arabia, and a little bit more as well. I've also been playing a bunch of games. I also have some new hardware. New to me anyways, new hardware that I have purchased as part of Amazon Prime Days, as part of Jeff Bezos's second birthday bash of the year, whatever he does on Prime Day. Dive into money like Scrooge McDuck. Anyways, I bought something off Amazon as part of Prime Day. I'll show that in a bit and talk about the games that I have been playing. But I wanted to take it back to just a few days ago, with the release of a little game called Silent Hill 2. What we're going to do is I got the reviews for both Silent Hill 2, which came out on the 8th, and I also have the reviews for Metaphor ReFantazio. Metaphor ReFantazio is coming out on the 11th, so just a couple days ago, Silent Hill came out. A day from now, tomorrow, also known as tomorrow, a day from now is also known as tomorrow. Metaphor ReFantazio will be out. So I figured, let's dive into some of these reviews, take a look and see what's going on, because I'll be honest, in the case of both Silent Hill 2 and the reviews for Metaphor ReFantazio, I was quite surprised. So let's see what the good folks over at Bloober Team and Konami have cooked up for Silent Hill 2. We're going to take it on over to opencritic.com. OpenCritic is giving the kind of the adjusted kind of average for a lot of these reviews. So out of the 68 reviews that are currently available for Silent Hill 2, the top average for the score is about an 87 out of 100. 87 out of 100, with 94% of critics giving Silent Hill 2 a positive review. We're going to take it on over to PCGamer.com. PC Gamer giving it a 78 out of 100, saying that Silent Hill 2's remake is fun, but a flawed take on a flawless gem. Rock Paper Shotgun does not do scores, but they did say a good-looking and unflinchingly loyal remake of the beloved 2001 horror game, yet one that plays everything safe. Destructoid, 7.5 out of 10, saying some restraint when it came to the lengths of the remake would have done wonders. But aside from the needless bloat and the technical problems, there's still a lot to like. Remaking Silent Hill 2 could have gone horribly wrong, but maybe this modernization won't replace the original for some, but it's at least a worthwhile new perspective. Let's keep looking at some scores and stuff. We'll go most popular. I'm just sorting through the list of everything. IGN, 8 out of 10, saying Silent Hill 2 is a great way to visit or revisit one of the most dread-inducing destinations in the history of survival horror. We're getting into the higher review scores now. Eurogamer, Vicky Blake over at Eurogamer with a 5 out of 5, saying against the odds, Bloober Team has delivered a remake that both expands Silent Hill 2 in just the right places and gives careful attention to what it preserves. Games Radar Plus is a 3.5 out of 5, saying does a good job of masking the series, making the series feel relevant in a way it hasn't for years. Another really high review coming from GameSpot. That's Mark Delaney over at GameSpot. 9 out of 10. Remaking one of the most revered horror games ever is no simple task, but Bloober Team impressively rebottles the magic of the 2001 genre landmark. And as always, let's give a shout out to Video Games Chronicles, giving it a 4 out of 5, saying Silent Hill 2 is a skillfully handled retelling of one of the medium's most loved survival horror games. It stays faithful to the original, to a fault at times, but breathes enough new life into it simultaneously, ensures that longtime fans will appreciate the respect shown, while newcomers won't find it antiquated. So I think for me, and I don't want to like always compare apples to oranges, but I think for me, one of the things that I found about the Resident Evil remakes 2 and 3, more so, is that they kind of did replace Resident Evil 2 and 3 for me. I have no desire really, except with the exception of maybe a little bit of morbid curiosity. I don't have a strong desire to go back and play Resident Evil 2 and 3 in their original formats. This is not the type of life that I am living. So while it seems like maybe Silent Hill 2 doesn't go as far as something like a Resident Evil to replace Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes to replace the original Silent Hill 2, it seems to me like, as an outsider looking in, that I think there's probably enough fun to be had with Silent Hill 2 that I could go into it appreciating it, even if I maybe felt like, oh, I didn't see everything I wanted to see, or I'm more curious about Silent Hill than ever before. Like, it seems like this is a good entry. This is a surprise. And I think it's a surprise because everyone, myself included, really shitting on Silent Hill 2 up until release. Like, a lot of people were just saying, oh, Bloober Team, they don't have it. They don't have the sauce. They don't have the stuff. They don't have what it takes. This is too combat focused. This is too this. This is too that. Like, and I'm guilty as charged. I'll put my hand up. I'm guilty as charged as somebody who did not have a lot of faith in this. And when I say that I'm surprised by this, it's not just that I'm surprised that this game is getting the reviews that it is, but like that it is a genuinely good game. It is not a perfect game, but it is a good game. From all the reviews that I'm reading, Push Square, 9 out of 10. Bloober Team has faithfully, respectfully recreated one of the survival horror genre's all-time greats, modernizing Silent Hill 2 in all the right ways. Like, I don't know if you could ask for much better from both Silent Hill. No offense to Silent, I don't want to like shit on Silent Hill fans, but like, realistically, this is about as good as it was gonna get, and it didn't look like it was gonna be that good up until it was released. So when I say that this is a surprise for me, I don't necessarily mean it to come off so it's like a backhanded compliment, but like, people did not have a lot of faith in this. They didn't. Even die-hard fans didn't have a lot of faith in this. Even outsiders like myself didn't have a lot of faith in this. I am very happy to see Silent Hill 2 getting the reviews that it is. This has now put Silent Hill 2 on my radar in a way that it wasn't in the past leading up until release. So, hey, you know what? I don't know if you can hear the clapping on the microphone, but I'll give a round of applause to Bloober Team. I think standing in what was looking like a pretty rough launch up until release. We're going to take a look at Metaphor ReFantazio. This will also be, I'm just adjusting the lighting here. You can't hear the lighting, but you might be able to see it. Let's take a look at Metaphor ReFantazio. This is a game that I've had a chance to play because I played the demo. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the reviews for Metaphor ReFantazio. We will then, we'll then dive into kind of what I think of the game based on what I've played so far. Metaphor ReFantazio is the new game from Atlas. More specifically, the team at Atlas that make the Persona games. So this is the next game from the Persona 5 and 4 people. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, is this a Persona game if it's made by the Persona people? No, it is not a Persona game in name. In in style and in kind of gameplay, it shares a lot in common with Persona. Don't get me wrong, but I just want to say out of the gate, this is the next game from the Persona people, but it is not a new Persona game. That won't stop me from taking a look at the reviews. PC Gamer giving it a 95 out of 100, saying a beautiful, this is how they describe Metaphor ReFantazio. They describe it as a beautiful 100-hour long journey from beginning to end. Metaphor ReFantazio takes the best elements of Persona 5 and somehow improves on them. IGN 9 out of 10. Oh, actually, you know what? If we go back for just a moment, I got too ahead of myself. I was so excited to talk about Metaphor ReFantazio. So again, opencritic.com giving kind of average across the reviews. Metaphor ReFantazio is currently sitting at a 92 out of 100, with 98% of critics recommending it, with 67 reviews collected so far. And like I said, PC Gamer giving it a 95 out of 100. IGN giving it a 9 out of 10, saying that refining the Atlas RPG formula of weaving tough turn-based combat into compelling social sim mechanics, Metaphor ReFantazio doesn't just send a powerful message across its political drama, it becomes a beautiful expression of the real impact storytelling can have on all of us. Eurogamer, 5 out of 5. Persona veterans Atlas flexes its expertise with a fresh take on high fantasy. What it lacks in subtlety, it makes up for in grandeur and heart. Game Rant, 10 out of 10. Metaphor ReFantazio leverages its Persona influence along with more classic RPG inspiration to deliver an unmissable role-playing experience. 10 out of 10 from GameSpot, saying Metaphor ReFantazio combines Atlas's skill in crafting emotionally charged RPGs with brilliant plot twists, its keen sense of adventure, and fantastical idealism to create one of its greatest games yet. Rock Paper Shotgun does not do scores, but they say a wonderful RPG that builds on many of Persona's foundations with a strong sense of exploration and a lovely suite of pals. But its heavy combat focus may mean it remains in the memory of less than less than its high school predecessors. Video Games Chronicles, 5 out of 5. Metaphor ReFantazio could have so easily been Persona with the names filed off it, but it's so much more than that. It matches fun, expansive combat with an excellent cast of characters that make the near 100-hour journey an unforgettable one. So it looks like if you get into Metaphor ReFantazio, just reading the reviews, even if I hadn't played this already, going off the reviews, if you were to get into Metaphor ReFantazio, you are going to be in it for the long haul. 100-hour minimum is no laughing matter when it comes to the length of games. I know people will play games for longer or shorter, but hey, it's a long ass time to play a game. You know what I mean? And I'd also say that when we look at it from this perspective of well, does it work? 100 hours, does it compel you? It seems like, you might, at worst, you might be like, boy, there's a lot of combat in this game, but it seems like it will carry you forward from beginning to end, which is really, really exciting. So let's go ahead now and let's take it back to kind of what I played of the demo. And we'll talk a little bit about Persona, just for people who aren't aware of what Persona is, and also what Metaphor is and how the difference is. So, Persona is a turn-based JRPG in which you play as a high school student who unlocks these powers, and then, each game, it's kind of like Final Fantasy, each game has a different story to it, but you use that new sense of power that you discover along with the friends that you make at school to go through the story and save the day and do whatever you're going to do, right? The combat often involves you, using that classic turn-based formula of, oh, I can attack with my melee weapon, I can cast a spell, I can use an item. In Persona, you're managing a party, so typically you have a party of about 4 people that you're commanding. So your main character will take their turn, and then whoever will take their turn, so on and so forth. Then the enemies will take their turn. You're often mixing weaknesses with strengths. So, oh, this enemy is weak to wind, I'm weak to fire, this person's weak to electricity, so on and so forth. They're weak to physical damage or strong to physical damage and all of that stuff. But when you're not doing the turn-based, kind of combat, you are also engaging with something of an open world in which you are kind of living your life as a high school student, in Persona anyways, where you are doing things like going to class. You are doing things like, joining the high school basketball team or the soccer team. So in that sense, you're also kind of managing the time that you have in the game, doing non-combat related things that actually feed back into the ability to be a stronger fighter in the combat, and things, and also, the social stories of like, hey, I went to drama class and I learned about the girl in drama class, and she has a whole story about why she's in drama class and all of that stuff. Metaphor ReFantazio kind of takes the bones of Persona, and I would say more than the bones of Persona, and really comes up with something that is quite a bit different. It strikes this really fantastic balance between familiar yet different. So I played the demo of Metaphor ReFantazio. It's out now on PC, PS5, and Xbox. It took me I did leave it running for a little bit, so I did have it paused for a moment, but it took me over 5 hours to play through that demo. I'm not joking, because you're playing through the prologue of that game. You are playing through the start of that game, similar to how it worked with, Final Fantasy 16. You're playing through the start of that game. One of the difference being is that it is a 5+ hour experience. I'll get to like the other things you can do in the demo, but it is a significantly longer experience than something like Final Fantasy 16, for better or for worse. The premise of Metaphor ReFantazio is that you are not a high school student in fantasy times instead of modern day Japan times. You are in a fantasy land, and it's all fantasy stuff, right? But the story, where Persona tends to lean more into this idea of social discovery and self-identity as part of its storylines, whether it's you're learning about yourself as a student and as a teenager while also dealing with a murder mystery, or while dealing with corruption in your school or whatever, or in the world around you, whatever the case may be. Metaphor leans more into this idea of politics. So it is definitely more of a political drama from what I've seen so far. The opening of the game, very minor spoilers, but I'll just say the opening of the game is you have this old king who is lying there, and he gets assassinated. You see the assassination happen. You know who the assassin is. You know exactly who it is. The problem is that this assassin is a real slippery one. He is really tough to nail down because of the influence that he has in the rest of the kingdom and the world that they inhabit. So it's a scenario where if the king were to die, he might be in a really good position to take over, despite not maybe having proper claim to the throne and all of this stuff. And the problem with the old king is that they, at the start of the game, they don't have anybody to take his throne by heir. You will later learn in the game the true nature of whether there is or isn't an heir, and whether this guy has proper claim, the assassin's guy has proper claim or not. But basically, the premise of the opening is like, okay, this guy dies, the king dies. Everyone knows who did it, but they haven't been able to quite get him. And you and the connections that you have that they establish a little bit later in the demo are like, okay, let's go get this guy. Let's go kill this assassin. Let's do our thing. And I think while Persona games and definitely Metaphor ReFantazio might be a little slow in that first couple of hours, it doesn't take long to really establish a more unique and tone and pace to the story that isn't quite in the Persona game. So in that sense, like, while I could talk about how I am using fire to cast, I'm casting fire on enemies that are weak to fire, I'm being hit for my weakness in electricity and wind, and I'm doing all of the same turn-based stuff that you kind of do in Persona. They do just enough different things, but I think more importantly, tonally, they do strike a different balance than what is in Persona, which I think to me makes a world of difference, because I don't just want Persona with the name filed off it, kind of like what the reviewers were suggesting. I also want something that, from a messaging standpoint, feels different. And I think that's really hard to come up with when so many things are already repurposed, remixed, and reimagined in Metaphor that originally came from Persona, that it'd be really easy to be like, well, let's just kind of have the same story or a similar story to what you might see in Persona. From what I've experienced so far, they don't do that. Let's talk about the things that are similar or evocative of Persona. You still got that turn-based combat. One of the things that's changed now is that you can, so the way the combat works is you will see the enemy in the world as you run towards them. That will engage the fight. But they now have introduced this concept of real-time combat, which means that if you are about to walk into a weaker enemy, you can actually attack them with your sword or whatever weapon you have. And it'll actually defeat them in one hit. So you'll basically skip that fight entirely because you are weaker than them, and you'll just get the rewards and everything for doing the fight. So it's this really awesome thing of like, hey, you've done the work. You are too powerful for the enemies in this area. You can choose to just one hit kill them, skip the turn-based combat entirely if you want to. There are some enemies that you can weaken to start the turn-based combat, but can actually kill with the real-time kind of button mashing combat. So I saw a big snake thing, and I was like, I hit it with like a 3-hit combo, and it stunned it, and then I could initiate the turn-based combat manually, and then basically start with an advantage having attacked the enemy. And it's so good to be able to have that sense of power, have that sense of like, oh yeah, like I got them on the ropes to start the combat, right? So you get this like wonderful balance of you're a bad motherfucker because you just took out this enemy in one hit with the real-time combat, but also you get this power fantasy of like, we're going to still engage with the turn-based combat. We're going to play this game the way it was kind of meant to be played, but we have an advantage to start things off. Now, I should mention that you can always engage with an enemy in real-time combat no matter what. I'm playing on Xbox, so it's like the X button to do the real-time combat, but you can always hit Y to engage in the turn-based combat if you want. So if you wanted to take your time to go through and do everything in the turn-based combat, you totally could. But like I said, based on what I played, if I became too powerful for an enemy that it was going to be an easy fight in the turn-based mode, I could always kill them in kind of 1 or 2 hits with the real-time combat if you want. It is a turn-based JRPG. When I played the game, I had 3 party members, including the main character. You can mix and match things like spells and abilities, and weapons and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, you are casting fire, you're casting ice, you're casting wind, you're using your melee weapon, you're using potions to revive your character or heal them, stuff like that. What's nice about leveling, which I don't think Persona 4 or 5 had, is that when you level up your character, you can actually choose what point goes into the skill. So you can be like, oh, you have better strength. So if you do use melee weapons instead of casting spells, you'll do more damage to that. You can add a point to per level to do more damage to magic, and things like that. I put all of my points the entire time I was playing the game. I put all of my points into luck, which is better item drops. And the thought process I had was, well, as I play through the game, if I'm going to spend a large amount of time fighting enemies over and over again to just repeatedly level up before facing the story again, I will at least get a lot of good stuff so that money won't be a problem, and stuff like that in the game. I'll have better items than I would otherwise, so on and so forth. In terms of what they have done differently, they've really fleshed out and made a flexible system for customizing your character. So the way that the powers and abilities work in Metaphor ReFantazio is something called an archetype. And those are unlocked as you meet characters in the game, but you can also find variances of those archetypes by acquiring certain currencies and upgrades and doing certain things in the game, right? So I think by the time I was done with the demo, I had 4 different archetypes. Don't ask me to name them all, but each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses and stuff like that. Like, for example, one of the archetypes is a swordsman, and you can cast a spell that does physical damage instead of just using your character's regular weapon to do physical damage if you wanted to, right? The only problem with using that archetype is that if you're fighting an enemy that casts fire, or whatever the weakness was, you will take extra damage to fire as a result, right? Like the healer, if you choose the archetype that is the healer, you are not going to be very powerful in combat, but you can probably buff your buff your ally so that they can do increased damage. I actually didn't play with the healer, but I'm assuming that the healer is like, oh, I can revive, I can heal, and I can probably buff my party if I wanted to, right? But the cool thing about the archetype is that you can mix and match to your heart's content from what I've seen. It's not like, oh, I picked a game where I'm the ranger, I'm the warrior, I'm the mage. It's like, no, I can switch this main character or any other character in my party to any archetype if I want to, and then upgrade them the way that I see fit and do stuff like that, which is really, really cool. So if you wanted to roll around with just swordsman for any reason, you could probably do that. When you change the archetype, it also changes the equipment that character has. So then it's like, okay, well, you're the healer, so you don't have a sword anymore. So if you do physical damage, you're definitely not going to do a lot of physical damage because you're hitting people with a staff or whatever. That is really neat because in Persona, the main character could switch their class at any time, but all of the characters in the game had a specific class that you just upgraded on a linear path. So you can really mix and match to your heart's content, which is it's a ton of fun. Like, that is, to me, not only an improvement over Persona, but I feel like a genuine game changer to the point where it's like, well, Persona 6 has to have this. Like, if they make a Persona 6, this has to be in the game. I can't imagine a scenario where they don't give you that, they take away that flexibility because you're a high school student in modern times or whatever. They've also added a couple different abilities in terms of movement. So there's like a dash ability, there's like a roll if you're trying to roll out of the way during combat. They also introduced like this ability to like ride on a sword while you're like surfing through the streets of the town that you're in and stuff like that. I'm really like blown away by the demo. I guess that's like what I would say is I went into it being like, oh, this is the new game from the Persona people. It's probably going to be more Persona, but fantasy. It's not. It's not just that, but it's different than what I could have imagined. And the end result is better than anything I could have possibly imagined, having now finished the demo. This game is Metaphor ReFantazio is without a doubt a game that's on my radar. Do I have what it takes to play through a 100-hour video game in time for something like Game of the Year deliberations and stuff like that? I don't know, because I got like 15 days to play through Final Fantasy 16 before Black Ops 6 comes out. So I'm already kind of, trying to keep my head above water when it comes to, well, Black Ops 6 is out on the 25th. Dragon Age the Veilguard is out on the 31st, and then yada yada yada, all this other stuff. Stalker 2 is coming out at some point. There may come a time where I buy Metaphor and then I have to make some serious cuts to what games I'm going to try to play in preparation for Game of the Year and stuff. But like, I was blown away by Metaphor. If you've never, like, my recommendation is, if you've never played a Persona game, don't worry about it. You should still play this demo. Even if you don't play through the whole thing, you should still play through this demo. It took me about 5 hours or so to play through the demo. And here's the other thing, is that there's still content to experience after the demo is over. You just can't progress any further in the story. It's really wild how much stuff they jam pack in there in terms of cutscenes and big story moments and reveals and character, introductions. Like, it's a whole ass thing that you play through as part of that demo. So if you're listening to this podcast, if you're watching this, my recommendation is, if you have played a turn-based RPG of kind of any kind before in your life, I think you owe it to yourself to check out this game. Yes, it will leave you wanting more, but even if you just wanted to see what all of the hype about this game was, if you're like, okay, I played the demo and now I know what the game is and whatever, I'm fine. You should, I'm going to write a blank check to everyone who listens to the show, and I'm going to hand it to you and say, play Metaphor ReFantazio, because it is fantastic. Really great. That combat is a ton of fun. The music, I didn't even talk about the music. Oh my God. Okay, so in general, the Persona games have pretty fantastic music. It tends to lean a little more poppy, a little more hip hop, a little more electronic, a little more rock, a little more modern sounding music because of the modern times that you are in. With Metaphor ReFantazio, they have taken the idea of poppy, catchy music, the way that you've experienced in Persona, but they have infused it into this orchestral, classical sounding music. And then you're playing through a battle, right? You're playing through like a boss battle, and you have this choir of people singing and the strings and all the stuff is going on, and it's awesome. But then like it kind of turns it down a little bit, and in the background you hear this like monk chanting, but he's not like chanting. This monk sounds like he's rapping, like he's just going like, I can't even do, like, I won't even try to do the impression, but like I don't know if I've heard a lot of like monks rapping before, or what sounds like the vocal inflection of monk chants in the form of rapping over this like orchestral music. But it fucking blew my mind. I was like, holy shit. I don't think I've ever heard anything so crazy before from the people who have made some of the craziest music and some of the best music that I have heard in video games. Oh my God. Whew. I was taken aback by the music in that game, unlike most music in video games. I cannot stress enough that this game is awesome. It is on my radar. I loved my time with the demo, despite it being very, very long. I loved my time with it, and I am hoping that I can pick it up sooner rather than later. The other thing I would say is, like, I've talked to people all the time about this, friends, family, people at work, you name it. The pricing of games right now, especially in Canada, is really expensive, right? Like it's not cheap to buy a brand new game, especially in Canada. Metaphor ReFantazio is retailing for $93.49. And to be honest, I just don't believe that I should be spending that much money on a brand new video game. But when I think about the part where, well, you do get you do get to carry over your progress from the story if that is your thing. If the reviewers are telling me that it is a 100+ hour game, so I get my money's worth, and it's incredible, so I kind of get my money's worth, I feel like of the games that you could buy full price for, this is probably one of the safest bets that you can make right now, unless you really hate JRPGs, or you really hate turn-based RPGs, or you absolutely hate the idea of fantasy or anything like that. I was really blown away by the demo. I absolutely loved it. And as a result, I maybe didn't get a chance to play all the other games I wanted to play this week because I was like, damn, this demo keeps going on. Like, it took me multiple sittings to get through this demo, right? Which is not something I would have said about the Final Fantasy 16 demo, for example. But we have to get through this podcast in multiple segments. So we're going to take our first break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I am GnittWitt. This is episode 115, and this is the beginning of a new era for the good folks over at 343 Industries. That is the Halo developer. It is the beginning of a new era for Halo. It was really tough to come up with a top story, but this means a lot to a lot of people, even if the current version of Halo isn't that meaningful to some. So it's a weird way to describe it, I know, but like Halo is a big deal, right? Like no one's going to argue that Halo isn't a big deal when it comes to the world of gaming. So here's what happens. The team over at 343 has rebranded itself. That is no longer the name of the studio. The studio is now Halo Studios. They've also announced that they have multiple games and they will be using Unreal Engine 5 instead of the original engine that was used to make Halo. So this news was shared on Sunday. The Halo World Championships tournament was going on, and they debuted a technical test of various Halo-themed locations running within the Unreal Engine. The studio stressed that the footage shown isn't a game, but a glimpse of what it might be able to achieve using Unreal Engine 5. The game engine is a framework for what is used to develop games. The problem that Microsoft's run into is that the cost associated with creating an original engine, an original tool set for games, makes it hard to not only manage and manage the upkeep for that engine, but also hire people familiar with the language that was used to develop it. So most developers opt for a kind of off-the-shelf solution, such as something like Unreal Engine, right? Epic, the Fortnite people, they make Unreal Engine. It's a very, very popular engine. So if, say, the people who wanted to make a new Halo said, hey, we're going to use Unreal Engine, and then they ran into trouble, making Halo using that engine, they could always call up the people at Unreal Engine and be like, hey, we need help. Can we do this? Like all that stuff, versus them having to solve their own problems with the tools that they made, right? So in theory, using something like Unreal Engine 5 would make for faster production, easier production, and possibly even cheaper production, as well as making it easier to hire people who are familiar with a more universally used engine than something like the Slipspace engine, which was used to develop Halo Infinite. Does that make sense? Now, the Slipspace engine was also partially blamed for the game's last-minute year-long delay and sluggish rollout of post-release content. So it's not even like their own engine worked out for them super great with the release of Halo Infinite. They put out a video. It's about 7 minutes long, and it's basically they're like a new dawn of Halo, and they get all these people talking about, oh, Halo this, Halo that, and we're back, baby, or let the Master Chief cook. I don't think they mentioned anything about the TV show, but that doesn't surprise me. Discussing Sunday's announcement, Halo Studios head Pierre Heinz suggested that the switch to Unreal would help solve some of the issues they had with Halo Infinite. Quote, we believe that the consumption habits of gamers have changed. The expectations of how fast their content is available is kind of what he said. Right? On Halo Infinite, we were developing a tech stack that was supposed to set us up for the future and games at the same time. Respectively, some components of Slipspace are almost 25 years old. Although 343 were developing it continuously, there are aspects of Unreal that Epic has been developing for some time, which are available to us in Slipspace and would have taken huge amounts of time and resources to try to replicate. I want to just have you think about what he said. We believe the consumption habits of gamers have changed the expectations of how fast their content is available. I think we're starting to see more and more that the stakes are way too high when it comes to AAA, especially AAA gaming. I would say indie gaming as well. Like, the stakes are too high. Companies cannot afford to put out mediocre games. Even if they're single player, not live service-y type whatever, companies cannot afford to put out mediocre games. If they're going to put out a game that is designed to experience multiple updates over the course of that game's life, they cannot afford to drop the ball with that next big update, that next content release, whatever the case may be. Think about a game like, and I hate to say this, but think about a game like X Defiant. Ubisoft's X Defiant. That game was delayed numerous times, took forever to come out, and then when it did, a lot of the updates that it had were few and far between and not nearly as exciting as what people probably wanted based on what that game was originally at launch. I don't want to say like damned if they do, damned if they don't, in terms of attempting to make a game in the first place. But let's be realistic here, right? Like, if you're going to put out the Halo game, and the Halo game is also going to have to compete with Call of Duty, you have to put your best foot forward. You have to put your best foot forward, because otherwise people will move on to something else. Or they'll just, in the case of something like Concord, and I'm not saying Concord's problems had anything to do with its engine choice or development or anything like that necessarily. I'm not like picking on the entire story of how Concord came to be. But some people will not even give your game the time of day, dude. Like, there's that game, there's a free-to-play shooter. It's on a couple of platforms, and it's like, oh, it's brought to you by like Shroud and all these other like, all these other like big named like streamers and all this stuff. Like, the finals isn't doing amazing, and the finals wasn't even that bad of a game when it came out, right? There are so many games that just come out and die and die and die. Spectre Divide, that was the game I was thinking of. Like, Spectre Divide came out. It's got 15,000 reviews on Steam, and no one is playing it. No one gives a shit about Spectre Divide. And that was like, oh, this is some big tactical shooter, and we got Shroud, and it's free to play, and like, no one cares. No one cares, right? And Microsoft simply cannot afford for people to not care about Halo. So I just kind of wanted to get that out of the way in terms of like, why does this all happen? Because the developers at Halo Studios are not going to like say this the way that I am. And I'm not saying I know everything. I wasn't there. I don't know. I've never shipped a video game in my life, but like, look at the market for games and see how none of this should be surprising. And in fact, this is probably one of the only ways to save Halo and make it relevant the next time one comes out. But let's keep going with what the developers had to say. One of the primary things we're interested in is growing and expanding our world so players have more to interact with and more to explore. Nanite and Lumen, Unreal's rendering and lighting technologies, offer us an opportunity to do that in a way that the industry hasn't seen before. As artists, it's incredibly exciting to do that work. Halo Studios also kind of hopes that, like I said, that switching to Unreal will enable it to more easily recruit new developers and get them up to speed faster. Alongside the engine change, the rebranded studio claims it's making changes to its culture, workflow, and how its teams are organized. That includes involving the community in decisions earlier in development. Studio head Heinz suggested that it'll be some time before the public hears about its future Halo projects, stating that he wants the developers to spend less time hyping its projects without substance, something that we've seen a lot of other developers do before, right? Why do you think it took forever for Rockstar to put out a trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6 than to say nothing. Remember when the trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6 came out like 7 years ago, and then we haven't heard anything since? Like, they need to show something, right? I've talked about it before. I'll say it again. The thing with marketing video games is that you are trying to sell the sizzle and the steak at the same time, but the only thing people actually care about is how the steak tastes in the end, but the steak's not done cooking. It's a very hard thing. It's moving target when it comes to marketing. It is not easy. So I can understand them wanting to spend less time hyping up its projects without any substance. Quote, one of the things I really wanted to get away from was the continued teasing out of possibilities and must-haves. We should do more and say less. For me, I really think it's important that we continue to posture, which we have right now when it comes to our franchise, the level of humility and the level of servitude towards Halo fans. We should talk about things when we have things to talk about at scale. Today, it's the first step we're showing. We're showing Foundry because it feels right to do so. We want to explain our plans to Halo fans and attract new passionate developers to our team. The next step will be talking about the games themselves. So what do you think? To me, this seems like the only way to keep Halo alive. I really do. I really do. And I say that as somebody who liked Halo Infinite. I thought the campaign for Halo Infinite was a good campaign. Thumbs up from GnittWitt. The Siskel to everyone else's Ebert or whatever. And while the multiplayer did not have a lot of content and it was really slow to put out a lot of content, I even thought the multiplayer, which was free to play, was good. I really hope that they keep it free to play the next time around as well, but we shall see. What do you think? You know, this seems like, to me, and I kind of jokingly reference this, but like, if they can get Halo off the ground and back to something resembling its peak popularity, then I think we might see that, you know, a better chances at Halo multimedia stuff. Like maybe they bring back that TV show, maybe they do another movie, maybe they do something like that. But for now, they kind of got to get the games, because there was think about this, a Halo game like Halo Infinite that nobody cared about, plus a Halo TV show that wasn't great that nobody cared about. It was a rough time for Halo, so they had to do something. This might seem drastic. This might seem like a company that and a franchise that's shedding its skin entirely or cutting off its head to spite its face. I don't think any of that is the case. I think this is them taking the best shot that they possibly can at bringing Halo back, and I gotta say, this leaves me pretty hopeful for the future of Halo. Red Dead Redemption and Undead Nightmare have been announced for PC. The game and its expansion will be released in October 29th to be exact, just in time for Halloween. A lot of people were wondering, when is Red Dead Redemption coming out to PC? Because it did come out on PS4 and Xbox One, I think Switch as well. Don't quote me on that. Red Dead Redemption is the first Red Dead Redemption game. It is also the, how would I put it? It is the sequel to Red Dead Redemption 2, in the sense that Red Dead Redemption 1 the story of Red Dead Redemption 1 takes place after the events of Red Dead Redemption 2. I played Red Dead Redemption 10 times real fast. I played Red Dead Redemption 1 like 14 years ago, which is crazy. Makes me feel old, because I am. And I thought the game was incredible. Do I feel a need to go back and play it now when I could just go back and replay Red Dead Redemption 2? It's tough to say. I know they're charging pretty much close to full price for it. I'm imagining it's going to be like $60 or something. How much is it on? Well, hold on. I'm going to go to the PlayStation Store. And I'm going to see how much Red Dead is on the PlayStation Store. And then I'll just kind of go from there. Red Dead. Oops. Okay. Well, Red Dead Redemption is on sale right now, but it is regularly $70. Now, $70 for a 14-year-old game is a steep price. Don't get me wrong. That being said, it does also include the expansion Undead Nightmare. Undead Nightmare is the zombie Western themed expansion for Red Dead. So you do get, and also Red Dead's a great game. There's a lot of game to it. It'll take you a long time. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of bring that out. Like, hey, it's finally making its way to PC. I'm sure it'll look okay. It'll look good. I don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, it's finally coming out. Ubisoft's had a rough go at it for quite a while. There have been reports that the Guillemot family and Tencent have considered taking the company private, buying up all of the shares and stocks of Ubisoft and taking the company private. Ubisoft has acknowledged those buyout reports, saying that we regularly review options. Last week, Bloomberg sources claimed that the Chinese conglomerate Tencent, which already owns around 10% of Ubisoft, and the Guillemot Brothers Limited, had been speaking with advisors to explore ways to stabilize Ubisoft, following a year in which its market value has more than halved. One of the possibilities discussed would involve teaming up to take Ubisoft private, it's claimed, though talks were said to be at an early stage. The report caused Ubisoft share prices to increase by nearly 40% compared to weeks earlier, and in a statement given to Video Games Chronicles, the company said that it regularly reviews all its strategic options. Ubisoft has noted recent press speculations regarding potential interest around the company. A spokesperson said it regularly reviews all its strategic options in the interest of stakeholders and will inform the market if and when appropriate. The company reiterates that management is currently focused on executing its strategy centered on two core verticals: open world adventures and games as a service native experiences. Last month, Ubisoft shares dropped to its lowest point in nearly 11 years. The recent dips followed Ubisoft's announcement that it had delayed Assassin's Creed Shadows and the disappointing launch performance of Star Wars Outlaws. Earlier in September, a minority investor called on Ubisoft's management to take the company private or let it be sold to a strategic investor. Hedge fund AJ Investments published an open letter calling for strategic and structural changes at Ubisoft. Now, someone put this on my radar and I didn't actually confirm it, so maybe we'll do some fact checking right now. But I heard that the Avatar game, remember the Avatar game that came out last year? I heard that DLC was coming out like now. Like, I heard that they're like Ubisoft not only is putting out is also putting out that Star Wars and all of that stuff, but apparently they're putting out the expansion pack to Avatar. Let me take a look. Avatar, what was it called? Frontiers of Pandora. And the only reason I bring it up is because if they're putting out DLC for that game now, they probably shouldn't be also dropping all this other shit. But let me see here. Frontiers of Pandora. Development. Yeah, okay. Well, how can I find this? I know that nobody gives a shit about this Avatar game, and to be honest, like, I thought it was neat, but when did that come out? Avatar Frontiers. Okay, here's what I want. Thank you, Ubisoft. Show me the road. Okay, so in summer of this year, they put out the Skybreaker expansion for Avatar, and then they did the Secrets of the Spires, which is supposed to be coming in fall of this year. So I feel like you'd be really cannibalizing a lot of Ubisoft stuff by putting out a pretty mediocre game like Star Wars Outlaws, and then putting out what could have been a mediocre game like Assassin's Creed Shadows, and then putting out an expansion for a kind of mediocre game like Avatar. I just feel like Ubisoft got too many irons in the fire, and that's why they're in the state that they're in. among other things. Though I also wish that like the sexual harassment and misconduct stuff also went away at Ubisoft more than anything, because if the developers don't feel safe and respected and secure in their place of development in their studio, you'll never make a good game anyways, right? So how about you start with taking care of the people, the worker bees, and then worry about the part where, oh, we should probably delay games. How about you support the people first? I got this news from Kotaku. This is a new study that claims most players prefer single player games. Now, this kind of goes at odds with where the industry seems to be at with such a big focus on multiplayer games and all of this stuff. But as reported by GameIndustry.biz, a new survey from Media Research suggests that 53% of people who play video games prefer playing them by themselves and don't want to play online PvP or co-op modes. According to Media, in 2023 and 2024, the survey asked a range of players from the US, Australia, the UK, Canada, France, Germany, Poland, Brazil, South Africa, and Turkey about their various video game preferences. And yeah, it turns out most people like playing single player games. However, digging into the data reveals some more interesting findings. For example, it seems that the older you are, the more likely you are to avoid online games and stick to single player adventures. 74% of gamers over the age of 55, sorry, old man, told Media that they preferred single player games over co-op or online PvP. In fact, the younger you are, the more likely you are to want to play with other people. Only 30% of players under the age of 19 prefer playing solo. Another interesting data point. 58% of mobile gamers prefer single-player titles, which is surprising considering how many of those single-player games tend to be free-to-play, live service type games. A ton of mobile games feature multiplayer and online social connections, but it seems like a lot of people just want to play Balatro on their phone while waiting for the bus or listening to a podcast. I will say that I have become more of a single-player gamer. I don't like using the word gamer, but I have become more of a single player experience person when playing games on my iPad and my phone. I am definitely like, oh, I can just play Balatro and I don't need an internet connection, or I don't need this or that, or talk to people. I would much prefer that, right? So I can definitely see more and more people moving away from or less interested in an online or multiplayer focused mobile game. Media says that the younger players were more likely to be able to get friends together regularly to play various live service games, while people 25 and older had busier lives that interfered with multiplayer gaming. Media also says that younger players are like to take vacations. Sorry, I'm gonna read that again. Media also says that younger gamers like to take vacations from games like Fortnite and Apex Legends, and suggests that publishers and developers should try to release new single-player games towards the end of live service seasons when players are more likely to be looking for a break. However, I will say that a lot of live service games, I know like Call of Duty has done this, towards the end of the season, they will come up with incentives for you to keep playing the game. Like, oh, you get double experience points during this, or we've boosted this, we introduced that. So a lot of those developers have caught on to people maybe checking out a Fortnite for the last, 3-4 weeks of the season and moving on to something else. So they have kind of caught on, but I think releasing a single player game at that time is not a bad idea. Now, of course, while this data shows that single player is still a very popular type of video game, I doubt, and this is kind of the author of this, editorializing, doubt that publishers will stop pushing for live service hits. The reality is that single player games are still expensive to make and take years to develop, just like live service titles. But if a live service game can build a large audience, you could spend years supporting it and making a lot of money while not having to make another big single player game experience. And even though history is littered with dying or dead live service games, data shows players like playing single player games one and done adventures, the promise of more money is likely too alluring for most publishers in 2024. So this becomes kind of the question is, can these developers find a way to make a live service online experience that allows single player, people to silo themselves away from a lot of the multiplayer and online social connectivity? Because I'll tell you right now, when I play some live service games or when I play multiplayer games, I will often go out of my way to play it by myself. I'll give you some examples. Space Marine 2. You can play that story mode with people. I didn't play it with anybody. All of that time I played with the computer companions. They also have that co-op mode where it is really designed for you to play with other people. I still played it by myself with my co-op, with my computer companions. When I play Call of Duty, I do not like message the friends and be like, yo, let's play some Call of Duty. I don't talk to anybody. I don't say, hey, do you want to play this game with me? I don't say anything. I just play the game. I hit like random, find a game, and then I just play it, right? Same thing with a multiplayer competitive game like Helldivers. I can think of like maybe 2 times in my experience playing Helldivers where I grouped up with friends in real life to play it. Other than that, I just hit the game, played it with random people. I didn't think about it. I didn't even talk to those people if I could. So when I saw it's, to me, the idea that most people prefer single player games, I can't stress enough that it seems like people prefer single player games even in the context of games that offer some sort of multiplayer experience. So this isn't surprising. This kind of reaffirms what I kind of felt, but it's nice to know that if given the opportunity, more and more people would rather play a game like Spider-Man 2 than something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Sega has announced that I can't pronounce that. Sega has announced that a Alien Isolation sequel is early in development from the original team at Creative Assembly. There's not much else to go off of about this game. But to mark the 10th anniversary of that game's original release, they said that the sequel is in early development at Creative Assembly, according to the studio creative director Al Hope, who also directed Alien Isolation, the original game. On the 10th anniversary, it seems only fitting to let you know we have heard your distress calls loud and clear. Today, I'm delighted to confirm on behalf of the team that a sequel to Alien Isolation is in early development. We're looking forward to sharing more details with you when they're ready. Originally released for PC and consoles before making its way to mobile in 2021, the first-person survival horror game was inspired by the 1979 movie Alien and drew praise from its tense gameplay and immersive world. Players take on the role of Weyland-Yutani employee Amanda Ripley, the daughter of Alien movie protagonist Ellen Ripley. In a story set 15 years after Ridley Scott's film, Amanda's mission to uncover the truth about her mother's disappearance leads her to a decommissioned trading station on the fringe of space, where she's forced into a game of cat and mouse with a xenomorph. Quote, it's been nothing short of incredible to witness your passion for the game over the years and to see it reach so many players around the world, Hope said in today's message to fans. Your boundless enthusiasm, excitement, and screams and steely courage in the face of cinema's greatest killer have been profoundly rewarding. Whether you're a nightmare mode veteran or stepping into Amanda Ripley's shoes for that thrilling first attempt, we wanted to express our deep gratitude. It was a dream project brought to life by a brilliant team, and the reception you have given it over the years is extraordinary. I saw that Alien Isolation movie. No, it's not Alien Isolation. Alien Romulus, excuse me. I saw Alien Romulus, and I feel like leading up to that release of the movie and stuff, there were a lot of talks about Alien Isolation. In fact, even the director took some influence from Alien Isolation and applied it to Alien Romulus. There's like a couple of machines and props in Alien Romulus that were originally from Alien Isolation. So to me, this felt like it would have been cool if they did this, but I wasn't too sure if Sega and Creative Assembly had it in them to do another one. Very exciting to hear about this the sequel. I wish them the best. I should go back and play a little bit more of it, though I did find Alien Isolation to be a tad slow. You down with LBP? Yeah, you know me. Little Big Planet 3 and the Little Big Planet DLC are being delisted from the PlayStation Store. They'll be pulled from sale later this month. The PS4 platformer and the entire range of DLC for the franchise will be pulled from sale October 31st. Anyone that currently owns or purchases Little Big Planet 3 or Little Big Planet DLC before it's delisted for sale will still be able to access their purchased games and content after its removal, so they're not taking it away from you. But it's interesting. It's kind of surprising because Sony owns Little Big Planet. They also own the creator Media Molecule, but they wrote on Twitter saying, Little Big Planet shaped us as a studio and remains an important part of who we are. We are and always will be forever grateful for its incredible community it has inspired. Little Big Planet 3, was released for PS3 and PS4 in 2014, and it was developed by Sumo Digital rather than Media Molecule. It is currently available to PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium subscribers as part of the game's catalog lineup, although it's going to be removed from that library on October 15th. Sony indefinitely shut the online servers for Little Big Planet 3 down in April, months after it claimed it had temporarily taken the game offline while it resolved technical issues. So, I don't know, like they did a lot of licensing deals for the game, so I don't know quite what sparked this other than if they're not going to keep the servers up, maybe they don't keep the DLC up. But hey, if you own it, you will be able to keep playing it. You won't be able to play it online. I never got really into Little Big Planet 3, or Little Big Planet in general. Little Big Planet was originally a PS3 and it was originally, trying to remember. Little Big Planet originally started on the PS3. They did 2 and then they did 3, and 3 was on PS3 and PS4. Little Big Planet was like a side-scrolling platforming, kind of adventure game. But the catch was that you could make your own levels, you could make your own games within Little Big Planet. So it was very much a game focused around community involvement and like, oh, I made this, I turned it into a kart racing game, or I turned it into a shooter, and I did all this crazy stuff with it. An incredibly ambitious game for the time that I don't feel like really stuck the landing in terms of the controls and the feel. It always felt a little floaty to jump. Though Sackboy was kind of like the most recent PlayStation mascot, Sackboy being the character from Little Big Planet, was probably the most recent PlayStation mascot before Astrobot showed up. So in a way, Sackboy walked so that Astro Boy could run. Saudi Arabia has reduced its stake in Nintendo, probably because Nintendo would not make a crown jewel championship belt for Saudi Arabia. At least that's what I imagine. CNBC notes that Savvy Games, an investment group founded by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, has cut its stake in Nintendo from 8.58% to 7.54%. Now, this move still makes it one of Nintendo's largest shareholders. The move follows widespread reports that Savvy Games was considering a move to increase its stake in Nintendo, reports stemming from an interview which was later corrected. So there's kind of like all these rumors swirling, like, oh my God, they're going to invest more. Turns out that wasn't the case. Kyoto News had initially quoted Prince Faisal bin Bandar bin Sultan Al Saud, the group's vice chair, as saying that the company was interested in investing further in Nintendo. However, the site later corrected inaccuracies in the quotes, instead attributing Savvy Games' interest to Japanese gaming companies in general instead of just Nintendo specifically. The fund acquired a 5.01% stake in Nintendo in May of 2022, and as of mid-2024, had grown to 8.58%, now going down to 7.54%. Nintendo has previously claimed that when the PIF bought its initial stake in the company, it was unaware of the transaction and first learned about the Saudi investment from news reports. I don't know how publicly traded companies work. I just can't imagine that one day you wake up and you're like, whoops, we're owned, 8% of us is owned by this group, like that, or these people, like, and I'm not saying like these people is in like Saudi Arabia. I'm just like, how does a publicly traded company just wake up one day and they're like, well, shit, this news to us. Like, you are the money people. How do you not know this? How are you surprised? Anyways, the PIF, which has made a series of investments in the video game industry in recent years, is reportedly central to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's goal of making the Saudi economy less reliant on proceeds from oil. In December of 2020, the fund acquired over $3 billion worth of stock in Activision Blizzard, FIFA publisher Electronic Arts, and Rockstar's parent company Take-Two. So they got fingers in a lot of pies, but it seems like they've divested just a little bit from Nintendo. Now, if you remember, Humble Games, the publishing arm of Humble Bundle, shut down, right? The former game staff have founded a new indie publishing group called Good Games Group. The company, led by former Humble Games boss, I can't talk today, Alan Patmore and Mark Nash, will now work with some of the development teams that it had previously collaborated with back at Humble. So they're kind of making good with the relationships they had while also forming this new entity. Intriguingly, this means that they will also work with Humble Games owner Ziff Davis once again, just months after its layoffs left the entire Humble Games team out of work. So they're kind of working for their boss a little bit, their old boss, but I guess now their old boss can't fire them because they quit. Or no, they didn't quit, they got fired, but you can't fire them twice. You only live twice. Now remember, back in July, Humble Games staff reported that Ziff Davis had made all 36 team members redundant. At the time, the plan was reportedly for any remaining publishing projects to be finished by an outside consultancy firm, the Powell Group. But it seems like the Humble Games team have reformed under Good Games Group and are kind of taking over a lot of that work, which is exciting. I will say this every single time. We need more indie publishers than ever before. Publishing games is really hard. Publishing indie games is really hard. I'm really excited about Good Games Group, and I wish them all the best of luck. We got a little bit more news. This will be a little bit of a longer podcast, but we'll keep on going. Everyone's favorite publisher, Paradox Interactive, have started to open up a little bit about City Skylines 2 and the other string of messes that they have come up with. Now, I just want to say, before we get any further, when I talk about, sorry, did I say Paradox Interactive? I meant Paradox Entertainment. Excuse me. When I talk about Paradox or Ubisoft, I really don't want it to come off as kicking them while they're down. But to me, this feels more like punching up. They are a big, powerful company in the games industry. They have influence. They should do better. They have not done better. So when I try to criticize them, please note that, like, I'm really trying to criticize the top brass, the decision makers, the money people, the people that allowed City Skylines 2 to be one of the biggest pieces of shit that has come out in that sort of genre in a long time. Let's keep going. Paradox Entertainment is the Swedish company behind some of the biggest, densest strategy games around, from Europa Universalis 4 to Crusader Kings 3. Now, those are two games that people actually quite like. Same thing with, what the hell is that game called? The space one. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's also been responsible for a number of major blunders lately. We've talked about the blunders to no end. Now, some of its executives are on an apology tour, promising a return to better times and a stricter focus on the niche strategy games it's best known for. Paradox's deputy CEO Matthias Leja. You got these funny names that I can't pronounce. The Swedes, God bless them, I love them, but once you got like stuff over the letters, I don't know how to pronounce them. Long story short, the deputy CEO and the chief creative officer sat down with a number of outlets to talk about the publisher's recent failures and what it's learning from them. Those controversies, missteps, and other issues include City Skylines 2, the incomplete early access launch of Prison Architect, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, and Life by You. So this is quite a long one, but let's kind of talk about it. City Skylines was an unexpected big hit when it came out. It was a great game. People liked it. In 2023, they put out City Skylines 2, and it felt like an early access game with less content than its predecessors and a lot more bugs. It seemed like a step down, and Paradox has been playing catch up. However, they indefinitely delayed the console versions of those games. The company blames part of the early negative response to poor hardware optimization and testing, saying that we knew the system requirements were going to be pretty high, but what we missed, which is absolutely our fault as a publisher, is that these certain combinations of high-level hardware also didn't work. They say that we were actually in agreement that iterating this was probably the right way to go. I think the lessons learned is that we should probably not launch that early. So it's almost like they should have delayed the game, which is like, duh, but it's kind of nice to hear that they know that. So then there's Prison Architect 2. They don't know when Prison Architect 2 is coming out. That's really all they had to say about Prison Architect 2. They said that Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 is another game that has long been in development. They had originally had the game developed by Hardsuit Labs, but in 2021, Paradox handed the reins over to the Chinese room, a different developer. They switched developers entirely. They did announce, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but basically they said, if this game comes out and is good, we will not make a third game. They said, we will license the Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines out to a different company entirely, but we are not going to touch a third Bloodlines game if this one comes out and is successful, which is interesting, if not surprising. And then they talk about, Life by You and how it was canceled, all that stuff. But basically, I'm not a big fan of these apology tours. I'm really, really not, because one of the reasons why I spend so much time trying to read the direct quotes and the press releases from these publishers and studios and all this stuff is because so much of it is filled with fluff. So much of it is filled with bullshit. Now, you could argue that I am doing a disservice to this podcast, taking so much of their word and, delivering it back to you, the listener. But when they go on tour and they apologize, I really want to be the one telling you, or I want to be one of the people telling you that the apologies don't matter. If they had taken down City Skylines 2, refunded everyone everything, if they actually tried to make good on the game, then maybe I would be willing to accept an apology tour from Paradox. But you can still buy the game. They're still charging money for it. It's still available. And other than refunding DLC, no one got their money back. I know they can't give me my time back that I spent on the game, which is fine. But these apology tours are almost meaningless. And anytime something like this comes up, Ubisoft hanging their heads low, Paradox hanging their heads low, whoever hanging their heads low, remember that these are people of power and influence, and they didn't just let this happen because it was out of their control. They let it happen because they thought that they could sell you bullshit video games and get away with it. Like, never forget that, right? Like, if you want to forgive them and buy their next game, that's fine. But you should never, ever forget what these companies have done, because when they go on tour and they're like, oh, we're sorry, you know, it's just their way to try to sell you the next pre-order of a game that may not be very good. And based on Paradox Interactive's record, there's a very good chance that the next game won't be good no matter how long they delay it. So they got to nut up or shut up. They really do. Like talking doesn't do any good. Put out some damn video games. I'll tell you right now, everything I've seen from Bloodlines 2 does not look very good. I would love a good action-adventure vampire game, but Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 looks like the opposite of a good time, no matter how long they delay it. So if I was Paradox, I would just fucking, and I know this sounds harsh, I would probably cancel the game and either shop out a actual real sequel to a different developer or never touch it again, because what they've shown, go look up footage of the Bloodlines 2 gameplay. Go. I'll pause. I'll wait. If you go do it, you will see some sort of janky, fucked up first-person vampire game that is the opposite of anything you could possibly want from anything, let alone a sequel to Bloodlines. So I don't know what to tell you, but if Paradox took their foot out of their mouth and actually got to work, maybe I would have a little more patience for them. But I don't. Games Done Quick, the speed running game event for charity, is going to hold a Hurricane Helene disaster fundraiser next week. Donations will go towards humanitarian aid organization Direct Relief. So if you want to watch it, you want to donate, whatever you'd like to do, that's going to be happening from October 11th to the 13th. So by the time you hear this podcast, it will be going on. So do them a favor, go check it out. Games Done Quick is a great organization. They do fantastic work. And to watch people speedrun video games is a lot of fun. So if you can donate, please donate. Check it out. And best wishes and lots of love to everyone involved with the destructive power of Hurricane Helene. Thoughts are with everyone there. Nintendo has announced new hardware. This is the final news story of the day. It's a longer podcast, but I don't mind. This is the new the moment we've all been waiting for. Nintendo has announced a new device that it would like to sell you. It's got Mario. It's got the Nintendo characters you know and love. This is the new Nintendo hardware. And it's a $100 alarm clock. That's right. Alarmo is the new piece of hardware from Nintendo. It is a $100 hardware clock with an LCD screen that plays animations and an alarm mode that gently tries to wake you up in the morning. A motion sensor lets you snooze it by waving your arm or shut it off entirely by getting out of bed. It can even spy on you while you sleep to tell you how much you're tossing and turning. You can pre-order this alarm clock now if you are a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber, but the device itself will not ship out until early 2025. If I know any friend, I looked at this thing and I want it. I want this alarm clock. It's a cute little alarm clock. It's got Mario on it. I like it. I want it. I need it. I need to go find out if I have any friends that are Nintendo Switch Online members because I want this thing. It's $100 American. I think it's 130 Canadian. Check out this thing. It's cute. It just looks like, man, I'll tell you, when Nintendo wants to make some good looking hardware, they nailed it. It's a cute looking alarm clock and I want it. And I'm sorry to everybody who was expecting a Nintendo Switch 2. Final break. When we come back, games that I have been playing. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. I continue to be GnittWitt, and I have in my hands, if you can see it on the screen, I don't want it to like cover up too much of my face or whatever, but what I have here is the Game Sir G8 Plus. I picked this up on Amazon just the other day. And for those that are listening to the audio version of this podcast and maybe can't quite see it, what this is a Bluetooth video game controller. And I bought this specifically for a Bluetooth controller for my iPad and for my iPhone. I have an iPad Air M1 and I have an iPhone 16 Pro. Now, if you were listening to this and you haven't quite visualized it yet, I'm going to try to describe this to you the best way I can. Think of this Game Sir G8 Plus as your regular looking controller in the kind of the Xbox layout format. So you got your for clockwise, it goes Y, B, A, X for the face buttons. You got your two analog sticks, you got your two triggers, your two bumper buttons, you got your two analog sticks, like I mentioned, your D-pad. You also got two buttons on the back as well. Now, to describe this thing, think of it kind of like the PlayStation Portal if you took the screen out. So there's a big gap in this controller, and you can adjust. This is a very common thing, but you can adjust this the how big the gap is on the controller itself, so that you can actually fit something like, if I were to do this, so I can toss my iPhone 16 Pro into the controller itself. So I can kind of turn it into a handheld if I wanted to, by just tossing the phone into the center and kind of closing it and securing it, or I could just use it as a regular Bluetooth controller. So I bought this because I wanted to get into some game emulation. I wanted to play some old video games on my iPad, on my phone. I also wanted to play some, like I got the 16 and I was like, well, they say you can play like Assassin's Creed Mirage and all of this stuff on your phone. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll check that out. But I didn't want to do it with the touchscreen controls. I wanted to do it with something resembling a more proper controller. So my thought is I'll probably toss this in my bag and stuff like that when I'm going to work and I'm out and about, and maybe if I'm watching TV on my desk or something, I'll toss this and stuff like that. So I got this on sale. It was about $80. I think it's regularly $100. For me, like, I just don't need something like a PlayStation Portal. And to me, the idea of playing mobile games with a controller sounds more interesting than playing it with a touchscreen and stuff like that. I'm also, I don't have a Nintendo Switch, so my mobile gaming needs are a little limited. My portable gaming needs are a tad limited, but so far I like this. The only problem I've run into is I don't find it very easy to switch between my iPhone and my iPad when it comes to Bluetooth settings. It's funny, when you pair it to this iPhone or the iPad, the Bluetooth says DualShock 4 controller. It doesn't say like Game Sir G8 Plus. It says like, DualShock controller, which is kind of funny. I wonder what sort of wizardry they're doing in this controller to fake it into thinking it's a DualShock. But anyways, it's responsive. It's decent. I played around a little bit with it. I like it. I do still need to do a lot of fiddling around, a lot of fucking around with the emulators on my phone. So one of the things that I've ran into is I've been using a couple of different emulators, Gamma and Delta on my iPhone and iPad. Gamma is an emulator that lets you play PS1 games. Delta is an emulator that lets you play like Super Nintendo games, Game Boy Advance games, that sort of thing, right? I have been able to get the saves to sync across my iPhone and my iPad, no problem, on Delta. So I've been playing Pokemon Fire Red, and I can play that on my phone, no problem. Save it, and then it takes a couple of seconds, but it'll synchronize the cloud save, and then I can download that save to my iPad, no problem. Easy peasy. For whatever reason, I cannot get the save syncing to work on Gamma, so my PS1 saves are not syncing. I did get frustrated last night and say, fuck it, I'm going to delete this app. I'm going to reinstall this app and try it again with a different, there's a couple different ways you can sync it. Like one's Google Drive, the other's Dropbox. So I'm still fucking around with Gamma to try to get the PS1 emulation save syncing to work. I have all the games that I need already. I'm good on games. I can put them on my phone and my iPad. I can play them on my phone and my iPad, no problem. The controller works, even if switching between the two devices isn't easy on the controller. I just want to be able to save my games and have them sync across the two devices the way I can with the Game Boy saves and stuff like that. But I'm not quite there yet. And unfortunately, that is kind of the nature of the beast when it comes to emulation. You can spend a lot of time tinkering and fucking around with emulation more than you do actually playing the games themselves. But I know that I can do it. Like, all of this stuff works. I just need to figure out a way to save the games properly, and I'm going to do that as soon as I can. If Gamma doesn't work, I know that RetroArch is another emulator that will also do a lot of the things that I want it to do. It's just that RetroArch is a lot more complicated. It requires a little bit more work at the start, but considering how much work I've already done to try to get this to work and it doesn't work, I would be willing to switch over to RetroArch entirely for all of my needs. My understanding is that RetroArch also works on PC. So if I wanted to save my stuff on PC and sync it to my phone and my iPad, I could probably do that. Though when I was thinking about my emulation needs, I was honestly thinking I would probably play my PS2 games on my PC and then play everything else on my mobile devices. But I'm not quite sure if RetroArch even does PS2 games. I need to look into it. Basically, I need to either figure out if I'm going to get Gamma to work on my mobile devices, or I need to figure out switching to RetroArch entirely. Some might argue that I should have switched to RetroArch from the beginning, but whatever. Gamma and Delta seemed easier. I have not run into issues with Delta, so we'll see. The other thing is that if I switch to RetroArch, I can do PS1 and all the stuff I use on Delta as well, so I can make RetroArch my one-stop shop if I wanted to. I just need to figure out what I'm going to do. So unfortunately, I've done a lot of tinkering, a lot of messing around with emulation stuff on my phone and my iPad. I'm not quite there yet with like, okay, I can hit the ground running and play all these games and do all the stuff. But hey, this GameSir G8 Plus controller is decent, even if it is a little finicky with switching between the two devices. I really wanted to come on this podcast and talk about all the time I spent with Final Fantasy 16. I really, really wanted to. Unfortunately, because of everything else that I just talked about and the fact that that Metaphor ReFantazio demo took like 5 or 6 hours to beat, I have not put in that much time with Final Fantasy 16. However, I only have 15 days left to finish Final Fantasy 16 in preparation for, jumping headfirst into Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So I promise you that I will have played a lot more Final Fantasy 16 when all is said and done by next week. I just don't know. I don't think I'll have finished it. My hope is that, what do we got? We have 2 podcasts. We have next week and the week after for me to play and finish Final Fantasy 16. Something tells me that I'll be able to do that. I do have quite a bit of time off this week to get it done, but that's kind of the thing is I didn't make the progress I wanted to make with Final Fantasy 16, despite how much I like it. But I also wasn't going to like drop Final Fantasy 16 to play the full version of Metaphor or anything like that. Like I knew going in, like I'm going to play this demo, but goddamn, that demo was long. So that's what I wanted to let you know is that like, I'm not done with Final Fantasy 16. I will make more progress next week. I also wanted to make an announcement about this podcast for the foreseeable future. We will be recording this podcast live Wednesday morning instead of Thursday morning. Ever since I joined, and I didn't even talk about them about this. I just made my kind of decision and just was like, I'll just do this and go from there. Ever since I joined the Big Red Barrel site to write about games again, I realized that their flagship podcast, the Big Red Barrel UK show, records at exactly the same time as me Thursday mornings. Despite the time zone differences of them being in the UK and any other time of the week and any of that other stuff, we have somehow found a way to record our podcast at the exact same time, the exact same week, the exact same hour. So, out of just pure respect for them, this has nothing to do with anything we talked about or anything like that. I just figured it would make more sense, especially because I put out the podcast a day later, where they drop their podcast the same day, I believe. I'm going to be recording my podcast at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Wednesday morning instead of Thursday morning, which is the same time that they do their show. So next week will be an earlier episode. I have less time to do everything than I typically do. And then we'll get back into the swing of things the week after that. So what that means is for you going forward is podcasts will be recorded at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time Wednesday morning. You will then get the audio and video finished version of the show probably around 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'll make sure that goes up early in the morning for you. This also means that if you wanted to check out the Big Red Barrel UK podcast, there won't be as many conflicts with the timing of things and stuff like that. Again, I didn't talk to them. This is purely just me just thinking that this would make things easier for me in terms of not feeling like I was stepping on anybody's toes. Again, can't stress enough. No one talked to me about this. I just said, hey, like I do my own thing while I also write for Big Red Barrel, and I don't want the other things that I do to get in the way of what Big Red Barrel does. So I'm just going to do my podcast at a different time at a different date. Well, different day, not different time. That is going to do it for the podcast. I have been GnittWitt. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree. That's linktree.com/GnittWitt. GnittWitt. Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky. I haven't really been using Blue Sky that much. And to be honest, I haven't really been using Twitter that much. But I am on Instagram Threads. So you can find me there. Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram Threads, all that good stuff in one convenient location. You do not have to change anything about your podcast settings or anything like that. Next week's episode, live Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then the podcast will be up for audio listeners Thursday morning, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's going to do it for the podcast. I have been GnittWitt, and we'll see you all next week. Take it easy.